Why hello there. This video is going to be a pretty short video, as you can see by the length. Now I'm someone who loves watching anime and reading manga, and just recently Fire Force wrapped up its anime, and I want to quickly talk about how it brilliantly connected its other series, Soul Eater. But James, there are other series that's already done that. I mean, Stephen King has multiple books that takes place in the same universe and are connected that you can talk about. Oh well, that's the thing. I've never read his books. Okay, I guess that's fair. So with that being said, let's dive into this. Now there are many mangakas that created different series throughout their career of being a manga author, like Hiro Mashima, who created Rave Master, Fairy Tail, and Eden Zero, Yoshihiro Togashi, who created Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter, and Rumiko Takahashi, who created Ranma 1/2 and Inuyasha, and a bunch of other series, but I'm not here to list all of that. But one thing that they all have in common is that even though they're different series, all of them aren't really connected. I mean, I can only think of one manga author that's actually connected their series together, and that was Akira Toriyama when he combined both Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump together. But if I'm being honest, that felt more like a crossover episode you would see on a Saturday morning cartoon, and something that's like relevant to the plot. But something that Atsushi Okubo does is that he makes the story of Soul Eater relevant to the story of Fire Force. You see, the story of Soul Eater began in 2004 and ended in 2013. And Fire Force began in 2015 and ended in 2022, meaning there was only a 2-year gap before Fire Force even started its run, and the story of Soul Eater was still fresh in the mind of Okubo. So he probably already had the idea that Fire Force was going to be a prequel to Soul Eater, but he didn't let his audience know that when he began the series. Because when we start Fire Force, we have a whole bunch of people who have fire powers stopping people who combust into flames. That's a whole different power system for what Soul Eater has, so I guess there's not really much to it, especially since the lore of Fire Force is very different from Soul Eater. But that's what we thought for the longest time, up until the end of season 2.
I can see it. It's all flooding in. The world illuminated by a new sun. At last, the Empire will finally become as it should rightfully be.
The moon from Soul Eater appears in Fire Force. But how is that possible? We have different power system, a whole type of event that happens. We have way different lore from what happens in Soul Eater. How is this even possible? Well, that's when they start drip feeding us lore in order for us to connect the dots between Fire Force and Soul Eater. And those drip feeds was the Great Cataclysm. And once Shinra traveled backwards, he discovered the first world. And that is when we discovered how Soul Eater was going to tie in to Fire Force. Once part 2 of season 3 dropped, we had characters looking more like cartoons, thoughts becoming reality, and characters in the universe becoming personifications of what they were born to be. All of that brings us to Shinra Banshoman and his recreation of the world. Now, I already knew this form existed because of manga spoilers and the goddamn opening saying fuck it, but when I tell you this, I jumped out of my seat when he transformed into it because I had no idea it was a connection to Soul Resonance, the main power-up in Soul Eater. Not only that, but Almea was the first person to ever become a Kishin, another thing related to Soul Eater. And once Shinra created the world of Soul Eater, that's when everything started to perfectly come together without messing up the previously established lore of Soul Eater. What Okubo did here was lure you in with a new series that you thought was going to be original, but in actuality, it was the setup for a series he already created. And honestly, I can't help but think that is so genius. Because genuinely, who even thinks of doing this? So yeah, that was my short video on how well Soul Eater and Fire Force are connected to each other. If you like what you see here, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, because this is a channel where I talk about all of my hyperfixations. And you could go follow my socials to see the artwork I've uploaded there. With that being said, I'll see you guys next time.